Let's now understand the detailed structure of contractile protein actin, which is the main structural protein of thin filament of muscle fiber. So two strings of beads we find which are twisted into a double helix. Okay, so it is made up of a bead-like structure, beads on string. It is a similar structure which we find in a nucleosome, that is available in DNA. Yes, the nucleosome model indicates DNA packaging well in detail. So each bead is a molecule of G-actin or globular actin that is having a 50 angstrom diameter. So we are having two strings of bead twisted into a double helix, and that is how the actin, the thin filament of muscle fiber, look like. The beads are molecule of G-actin or globular actin. You can see here these are the monomers or G-actin which are put together in a string-like structure for formation of actin, and the diameter of G-actin is 55 angstrom. So definitely these structures are very small. Actin shows high affinity for calcium ions. It's a very important fact which we need to understand. Calcium is very important for muscle contraction. That is why we have the parathyroid hormones which ensure level of calcium good enough in our body. For prolonged calcium deprivation or food deprivation, our bones demineralize to yield calcium into the bloodstream for maintenance of continuous supply of calcium. So actin, the thin filaments of muscle fiber forming component, show high affinity for calcium. In presence of salt and ATP, it is converted into fibrous actin or F-actin. So filamentous actin or fibrous actin is made up of from monomer, which are the G-actins or globular actins. And yes, they are tiny globular structure having diameter of 55 angstrom, which you have already discussed. Next, we will be talking about the tropomyosin. Let's see how significant it is for the muscle structure formation. So tropomyosin is a two-stranded alpha helical rod-like structure which is located in the groove between the two helical strands of actin. So we are having helical strands of actin, and in between we have the groove where tropomyosins are visible. So tropomyosin is nothing but two-stranded structure, elongated long structure. It is an alpha helical rod that is present in groove between two helical strands of actin. Next we have a troponin complex. The troponin complex is attached to the tropomyosin at regular interval of about 385 angstrom. So yes, we have the myosin binding sites on actin, definitely. Tropomyosin is also clearly visible here, that is present at the groove of the two helical beads of actin, and we have the troponin complex that is attached at a regular interval of 385 angstrom. So together they make up a very important structural architecture for activity of muscle in a smooth way. So troponin is the next contractile protein we will talk about. We have already seen myosin, actin and tropomyosin. So troponin is nothing but a globular protein. Yes, it's a globular protein. And here you can observe the troponin, globular protein. The troponin consists of 3 polypeptide chains: the calcium binding subunit, the inhibitory subunit and the tropomyosin binding subunit. So troponin is very important for the stability of structure of the muscle fiber. It has 3 polypeptide chains, the calcium binding subunit that will bind with calcium, here the troponin C, which is important for calcium binding, the inhibitory subunit, that is troponin I, and tropomyosin binding subunit, that is troponin C here. So troponin definitely is a very important component of the muscle fiber, for as it is having different binding sites for characteristic functions. The troponin is an important control protein. Yes, it can control the activity of muscle fibers by alteration in its structure. So yes, this is very important. Let us continue to understand the structure of muscle fibers. So yes, we have the contractile proteins which are troponins. The troponins have high affinity for calcium, like you have already seen. When calcium binds with the troponin, the active sites of actin protein are exposed. So for exposure of the active sites of actin, calcium needs to bind with the troponin. Troponin and actins are highly associated, and thus they communicate with each other by chemical signaling. Just when calcium binds with the troponin, so here we have troponin with which calcium is going to bind. Right after the binding of calcium with the troponin, actin will have its active site exposed. So we will have an active site of the actin protein that will be exposed for functioning.